How's it going, everybody? Nice to see you all. You have a good lunch? Yes? Awesome. So nice to see everybody in person. I've met some of you already. Hopefully, I'll meet more of you. We're just hanging out in the BFS lounge afterwards as well, so come by and say hi if I haven't spoken to you already. And thank you for coming out to this talk. I'm super excited to be talking about the new, simpler BFS design requirements. I guess this is popular. This is almost a full room here, so this is awesome. My name is Mark Appleby. I'm a staff UX designer at Shopify, and today I have the pleasure of being joined by Gavin Harvey, who's a director of build, UX director of build on Shopify. And before we jump into all of the changes with the design requirements, I would quickly like to get to know a little bit more about all of you. So what we have is 3 different statements I prepared. We'll run through those quickly, and then we're going to do a quick show of hands to see what resonates most with each of you. Okay? All right, so first up, statement number 1. I love the design requirements and app design guidelines. They help me understand how to design great apps for merchants. All right. Statement number 2. I hate the BFS design requirements. I'm mostly attending this session to find someone to complain to about in person. That's Gavin, if you're looking. He's the person to complain to. All right, and then last up, statement number 3. I'm thinking about submitting my app to the BFS program. Here to learn. Statement 2 just scared the crap out of me. All right, so quick show of hands here. Who's statement number 1 person? Loves the requirements. Oh, okay. Okay. Half. We got a half. I'll take it. I like that. Bless you. Thank you for being here. We love you. I was worried there's going to be no hands, so I'm excited there's any hands. So that's awesome. How about statement number 2? Statement number 2, people. A couple. Don't be shy. This is a judgment-free zone. Yes, good statement. A hand at the back there. Thank you. And last up, I saw a couple hands already for statement number 3. But statement number 3, new to the program, here to learn. Wow. Okay, that's a lot more than expected. That's awesome. Well, this is a great time to be jumping in because of the changes we're going to walk through here today. Okay, so just quickly to touch on the agenda for today, we're going to briefly look at the previous requirements just so we have some context of the changes we've gone through here. We're going to then zoom out quickly and just talk about why do we even have design requirements as part of the BFS program? What's the point of them? Then we're going to look at all of the new simplified requirements. We don't have time to go through each one in detail, but we'll drill down on a couple specific ones. And we're going to quickly look at what you can expect in the future. This is a pretty massive change to the program. It's certainly not our intent to be making radical changes like this every 6 months, so we want to kind of set expectations of how you can expect this program to evolve going forward. And then hopefully we'll have about 10 minutes of time at the end for Q&A, ideally. But as I said already, Gavin and I are going to be hanging out in the BFS lounge, which is just outside the doors there, so if we run into Q&A time, please come by and ask us questions over there too. All right? And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Gavin to walk through the previous requirements.
Cool. Thank you, Mark. All right, so yeah, I think before we get into the changes to the program, it's good to zoom out a little bit and just kind of talk about like why do we do this, you know? So previously, up until basically now, we had a lot of design requirements. We had over 104 to be exact. They were spread across 13 different categories, and we've heard feedback from partners. It was a lot. It was overwhelming. In some cases, ambiguous, added a lot of toil for folks just trying to get the badge. Oops, sorry, go forward here. So, okay, so yeah, I think one thing that we want to make really clear is that, contrary to popular belief, Build for Shopify is not a design award. Instead, it's really a seal of quality for merchants. Everything we do at Shopify is aligned with merchant value. And that's really first and foremost for us. So Build for Shopify is really intended to be more of a seal of quality. It's a guarantee that your app won't leave merchants feeling confused, stressed, or misled. And so in clarifying the requirements, we looked at those potentially negative outcomes and we flipped them into positives. So instead of confusing merchants, your app should feel familiar. Instead of leaving them feeling stressed, your app should feel helpful. Instead of being misleading, your app should be user-friendly. I think these are all like pretty non-controversial things. But these 3 positive attributes have become the basis for the new simplified categories of design requirements in Build for Shopify. So that's what we're talking about here.
I just want to remind everyone as well, we still do have a design award. So Still do try and strive for like amazing design. Obviously, we want to recognize that. I think we're going to be announcing the winner of that later today too.
Be doing that here at the end of the day with Harley. Okay, so yeah, like I said, we've reduced the number of requirements from 104 down to 19. Yeah, wild applause. And so I think that's really the main headline here. With that, I'm going to hand it back to Mark. He's going to go into a little more detail about each of these requirements, and then I will wrap it up.
All right, so like I said before, we're not going to have time, unfortunately, to go through every single requirement. Even if there's only 19 of them, we're not going to go through every one of them in detail, but we'll zoom in on a couple as well. So the first category here is familiar. And familiar is all about just generally looking and behaving like the admin, essentially. And we'll get into the nuances of what that means in 1 second here. In this section, we have these 6 requirements. So follow UX best practices, be mobile friendly, have a concise app name, use the nav menu, use the contextual save bar, and use modals appropriately. And the one I want to zoom in on here is 411. Some of you may recognize this one. We have this one previously, and we still have this one. I love that it's 411 as well. That just was a coincidence, but this is really our catch-all requirement. So this one's a bit of a standout one. All the other requirements are pretty like focused and targeted. This one happens to be a bit of a catch-all bucket. But the spirit of it is kind of try to look like the admin. And when I say kind of, we're not looking for perfection here. So if you're not using Polaris React because you don't use React, first of all, check out the new web components we just launched. They're awesome, and you don't have to use React. But if you're using like an old, Ruby on Rails sort of quasi-Polaris library, and it's not quite perfect, maybe the border radius is not quite the perfect value or whatever, that's fine. All we're looking for is like something that kind of looks like the admin, essentially. And I think a lot of people have maybe misinterpreted this as we don't want you to have any brand expression whatsoever in the admin. That is not true. But we do want some things to be consistent for merchants because we just strongly believe that it leads to the best merchant experience. So if, for example here, you can see we're adding in a new aspect of this requirement, which is around the admin button styles. So we want buttons to look consistent for merchants. So if your app happens to have orange as your primary brand color, you can use that in the context of your embedded app. That's totally fine. But your primary button color shouldn't be orange. It should still be black, like the admin's primary button color. And that's just a better merchant experience. When the merchant is bouncing around from different surfaces in the admin, they don't have to kind of reorient themselves constantly and be like, what's the primary button here? What's the primary button here? It's just always nice and consistent for them. However, like I said, brand expression is totally great and fine, and we love that. We support that fully. So, we love seeing, really interesting hero with like, a unique illustration style, or maybe it's through the tone of copy that you communicate your brand. There's a lot of different ways you can do that. Just please don't do it with buttons specifically. That's really what we're getting to here. Next category we have is helpful. And helpful is all about making an app that just works well and it's easy to use and it's intuitive. And so under this bucket are things like error handling. So if you have errors, they should be displayed contextually. The error messages should be clear. Just guiding merchants to the happy path. So guiding merchants when you're onboarding them, and then guiding merchants when they run into points of friction as well. And under here we have spelling, grammar, and phrasing. Previously, I think we had about 12 different requirements around how to write text, essentially. These are all just wrapped up into this one here, 421. We have helpful onboarding, helpful homepage, helpful error messages, guide merchants to logical actions, and visible previews. And the one I'm going to zoom in on here is visible previews. We had a requirement previously around editors like this. I think it was called 2-column layout. And it wasn't really getting to the spirit of what we wanted. So we've revised this to better reflect the actual merchant outcome that we're striving for here. And in this context, what we really want is an experience where a merchant doesn't have to constantly scroll up and down to preview the real-time preview that they're trying to see. So for example, imagine there's a control way down here, and they have to scroll this page down. And then as they scroll down, the preview moves up and out of view. It's a very frustrating merchant experience because then they have to scroll down, find the control, tweak it, scroll all the way back up again. That's actually a pixel off. Scroll all the way back down, find the control, up. So we've seen apps that do that before, and we just strongly believe that's a really bad merchant experience. So that's really what the spirit of this requirement and what it's meant to prevent. All right, and last category here is user-friendly. And this is really all about being nice, basically. Don't be unfriendly to merchants. So sort of like UX dark patterns would really fall into this bucket here. So don't make false claims, don't pressure merchants, don't distract merchants, don't overwhelm merchants, don't impersonate Shopify. Definitely don't do that, please. Have dismissible ads, and label and disable premium features. And we're going to zoom in on 433 here, don't distract merchants. And the reason I want to call attention to this one, this whole talk and this whole initiative has really been about simplification, obviously, hence the title of the talk. We've really tried to cut a lot of the requirements down and not be quite so nitpicky. This is one of the very, very few exceptions where we're actually adding something new. So I wanted to call special attention to it. And I see it constantly as well. So basically what we don't want to see are pop-ups just pop up automatically in a way that is very distracting to merchants. And where I see this all the time is like chat support pop-ups. We love that you're offering chat support for merchants. Merchants love it too. That's a great feature, a value add, unquestionably. It's just so annoying when I install an app and the first thing I see is bloop, chat support pop-up. It's not what the merchant ever needs in that time. And so, you can have the chat down there and it can pop up contextually as well, or maybe you direct them to it contextually. So if a merchant runs into an error or point of friction, maybe then you guide them towards the chat support feature. But it shouldn't be something that appears as soon as they install the app right away. All right, and with that, I'm going to pass it back over to Gavin to talk a little bit about the future.
Cool. All right. Thank you, Mark. So yeah, just saying the thing. This is a big change. And as Mark said at the beginning of this presentation, this is really not the norm for Shopify. But we do think it's an important change. And we think it's something that really comes from the feedback we received from partners like yourself. So let's talk about how you can expect things to evolve from here. So one thing we plan to add, and we've already added some of them, are more failure examples. Their purpose is really to provide more clarity on how to meet each requirement. We didn't have these before, and it's also more of a show, not tell kind of way of just illustrating what we mean when we're talking about some of these best practices. Secondly, as you probably saw last week, and Mark alluded to a few minutes ago, we just announced a new version of Polaris, which is based on HTML web components. And we encourage you to try them out. They're evergreen, meaning that the CDN will help your components automatically stay in sync with Shopify design changes. So this makes it easier to stay current with how the program will be evolving in the future, and reduces hopefully the workload of staying in sync with that. Lastly, we are improving our internal training. We've invested in making it more efficient, making it more consistent. Again, this is based on the feedback we've heard from you that in the past, the review process hasn't been as efficient or as consistent as we want it to be. And with that, we will be looking at apps that fail repeatedly, diving into those cases, really just to see if that failure is like a result of the requirement being a problem, and if so, modifying that requirement accordingly, okay? So yeah, we have some time here for Q&A. As a reminder, Mark and I will be in the BFS lounge. Come visit us. We can talk more. And, I think overall your feedback is encouraged. We do use that to improve the program. And we just love how engaged our partners are. And so definitely, like Mark said, don't be shy. We want your opinions. Cool. We have a couple mics that we can give the audience if there are questions. One right there.
Hi. Is it working?
Yep.
Okay. Could you share some data on how many merchants are actually using their mobile phones to set up their apps?
For app setup specifically?
Well, yeah. Because it's very complex to build an app to be mobile friendly if it has loads of features.
Yep.
Sometimes a real headache. So I'm just wondering what the percentage is if
It's a great
share
question.
some insights.
Come visit us after this. We'll either look up the dashboard or we'll find someone who knows. Cool. We got one over here. Oh, I'm sorry. My bad. You'll be next.
Me? I'm good. As more and more apps try to get the BFS badge certification, will you keep, let's say, grading them on a curve to limit the number of apps that have BFS? Or are we going towards a place where most apps will have it, and then if you don't have it, you penalize? I'm really curious to know where we are heading towards with BFS.
Yeah, this is an excellent question. I know a lot of people probably have the same question. So just kind of at a very high level, right? Our aim with Built for Shopify you can think of it as like a floor that is, steadily rising, right? We want quality to be improving across the ecosystem every year. So with that, we expect that every 6 months, we're slightly, raising the bar. And so because of that, our expectation is that, not every app in the ecosystem is going to have the badge. Like that's not a goal. We want BFS apps to really represent like the top tier of apps that are available to merchants. And we want that, list to be selective so that as a merchant, when I do, a search for discounts or whatever, I'm not just seeing a full page of apps with the badge, right? Obviously that, that's a trade-off that requires a continuous investment from partners. We know that. But we think it's a good trade-off to make, again, doing everything for merchants and steadily increasing that bar of quality over time. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay. We had, gentleman over there first.
Just hold it close to your mouth.
Yeah, Mike from Smile. I was in the first group at the start, so we're happy with the program. So thanks for having us. We were curious, like, obviously we don't have any analytics on what merchants do in admin. So we're curious if you're seeing like merchants are sticking around in admin, they're completing more tasks. Like, how are you evaluating the success of like Built for Shopify in terms of like the merchant tasks that they're doing? I know it's a very general question, but we're just curious if you're seeing like merchants like getting their stuff done or less frustrated or something like that. Because it helps us like prioritize where we put things like in admin and stuff like that. So.
Yeah, I don't know retention numbers off the top of my head if that's sort of part of the question, but
Or even task specific like usage.
Like as an example, like you used to have like some, or you still do have some apps where like the merchant needs to leave to do their tasks and then like probably don't return 100% of the time. So like, are you noticing more sort of like returning to what they were doing before? I guess like
I mean,
as a very
the embeddedness is part of the criteria of the program in general, right? There are a couple exceptions where you can have an app that is partially embedded, but then has still kind of stuff in an external website. But I think more and more we're moving towards this future where ideally everything is embedded within the context of the admin, and the merchant just stays and does their entire job within that context.
The main way we measure the effectiveness of the program, and this is not going to answer the question that you had specifically, but more generally, is primarily through install share. So what is the percentage of overall installs that are Built for Shopify apps? Right now, that is just north of 25%. We do have some larger partners that we're hopefully bringing on this year that will probably bring it above 30. Our goal is to be around 50 ultimately. So in other words, like of all the app installations across all merchants, that's our target. That's generally how we measure the success of the program. What you're asking is a great question, and you're looking for like more like merchant usage. We don't measure Built for Shopify from that vantage point, although we probably do have metrics around activity. It's just not part of the criteria for the program success. Who's next? We got one back here. Okay.
Yeah, I had a question follow up to what you said about the embedded portion requirement. Some apps just don't have, that's not necessarily the nature of the app per se. So can you just talk more of why that is a requirement for Built for Shopify when you have now extensions which help you, integrate with the storefront or checkout or even the admin, and now that kind of eliminates why you would need to actually have an embedded app that does something when you click on the app inside Shopify. And I just wanted to hear y'all give a little bit more about that.
You're saying like there could be a scenario where the best, in your opinion, the best merchant experience is that they're just interfacing with the extension points.
Right.
And you don't even need an app home whatsoever.
There's not, and then
we would agree with that.
There is something. It's a little bit more complicated because you have a partnership with merchants, and it's not just plug and play.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, our team actually owns the admin UI extensions as well. So I love that you love them too. So that's awesome. We like to see more adoption for those. They're not really part of the program right now, but they're also like very, very new. So I could see them maybe rolling into the program, and we could be thinking about it through that lens. I would love to like chat with you afterwards on the BFS Lounge about your specific use case as well, and we could like note that down. There are some.
I'm more just saying, why is being an embedded app a requirement when you have UI extensions that an app, and that's not an embedded part of the app?
I see.
Well, okay, so the purpose of that rule is really to make sure that merchants aren't clicking out to like a different tab, right? So what you're talking about with regards to extensions, and I would completely echo what Mark said. Like we love partners that are looking at using extensions more and building even extension-only apps, kind of like what you're alluding to. That's within the spirit of that rule. So it's really about keeping merchants within their workspace. And in fact, I would argue that in many cases, extensions do a better job of that because you're not even leaving your resource page to go to the app home. As it stands, I mean, we still kind of think that most apps have a need for some kind of embedded app home, even if it's just like a homepage or a settings page. But we are seeing more and more partners really just building directly into the core pages of the merchant admin, like you're suggesting. That's a good thing. So we can talk more about it over there if you want, but like, I actually think what you're saying is very aligned with the rules of the program. And we wouldn't be like, oh, you're using extensions, you're not qualifying. That's not how we would look at it at all. Yep. I would say so. Would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, again, I would love to talk about your specific use case, and then we can work out the details of it. But
Yeah. Assuming it's a good landing page. Yeah.
I mean, I would argue that you couldn't be more embedded than using an admin UI extension. Like that's as embedded as it gets, basically. So.
Yeah, but it's not embedded unless.
It's not how we use. That's not how we use the word embedded as applies to BFS right now. Yeah, but
Let's talk more about it. But I think you're generally like in the right zone there.
yeah.
Who's next?
Yeah, in the spirit of like staying ahead of the curve of like the current BFS requirements, do you see like the new admin intense features kind of playing into like the future roadmap of what might be not necessarily required, but like highly recommended for BFS apps?
I like this question about intense here. This is like looking ahead. Yeah, I can answer it. You can answer it one more.
I mean, yeah. Also owned by our team, so love that you're using that too. That's awesome. Yeah, those are they're brand new, so we're just rolling those out now. But I think I can't commit to it right now, but they're certainly within the spirit of the program, right? It's like all about keeping merchants in context, doing more in context. So
Right now, intents only work within the core merchant admin. They're not available to apps, but our aim is to make them available to apps, both to pull in data or resources from core Shopify, or vice versa for core Shopify to pull data in from apps. That's the overall objective of that work. So when we get there, maybe that becomes a part of the program, but that's still a little far down the road. Yeah, I love that question though. We had a gentleman right here. You've been raising your hand a few times.
So you mentioned like making Build for Shopify better and better, or like making the requirements harder and harder over time. Have you guys thought about like, because I was in the App Store conversation before, and they were talking about how there's going to be things around like larger GMV merchants versus smaller GMV merchants. Like from a Built from Shopify standpoint, I'm just wondering, like, are you guys heading to a place where there's like a way to identify like this app is great for like enterprise because they do good security and like SOC compliant, blah 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 blah. Yep. So just wonder if there's any thoughts on that.
Yeah, good question. Come talk to us about the Plus Certified App Program. We do have a program for apps that are really aimed at enterprise. So more we can talk about there, but the answer is generally yes. That already exists, and we can get more details about what that involves.
So we're primarily a POS app developer. So we're a CRM for retail stores. A majority of our users are using a mobile device and using Shopify POS. I think one of our challenges right now is like we could actually build like arguably the best built for Shopify POS application with all the POS extensions, but ultimately it wouldn't pass unless we have this requirement where we have to embed into Shopify admin. But our users are not in Shopify admin. Most of them don't even have access to Shopify admin. So I think our challenge has been like, what you're asking us to do is invest resources into a place that our customers actually don't care about or don't even have access to. And so I'm curious if you're trying to do anything to like have maybe different requirements for POS specific applications or merchants, developers, and or if you have even like talked to any POS app developers about like these challenges.
Yeah, I mean, this is not even exclusive to POS, I would say. Certainly this topic has come up quite a bit. even today, just chatting with other partners in the lounge over there. So I think it's definitely something that we're hearing a lot of feedback about and we're well aware of, and I think it's realistically something we want to revisit. We don't want to penalize the best POS app in the ecosystem, because of this weird reasoning. So, yeah, I don't. Thank you for the feedback, and all I can say is like we're well aware of it, and we will work on what to do about it. I would say.
I would agree. I think we need to do more around like those other specific services like point of sale, checkout, where that's really the app experience just there, not in the admin. Right now, the program is obviously very heavily leaning into admin experience, and I think that's where folks like you are building in the other Shopify services are kind of feeling like left out a little bit. So I would agree with that.
Is there flexibility today if we were to like work with you guys to try and still get the certification without necessarily being in the admin in that circumstance?
Let's take a look at your specific use case, and then let's talk about that.
Do you plan to release the LLM to help us to pass the BFS review?
Do we plan to? I mean, there's not a specific projection around that, but it's an obvious use case that we're thinking a lot about right now to help automate. Can you say it again?
Say again. Do you plan to release LLM agent to help us to simulate the BFS review?
I mean, we certainly haven't talked about releasing anything, I would say, at this point, but I could certainly envision a future where some portion of the review is automated by our reviewers. So the reviews become more consistent, they become quicker and more efficient, maybe get the feedback more promptly. We haven't, I don't know if there's any other details I could share on that topic right now, but.
Yeah, I would agree. There's not a plan to release an agent specifically for partners to kind of, simulate a review. However, I will say this is somewhat related to what you're saying. We are now hosting the component and pattern documentation on MCP server, and there's also a link to download the markdown for those pages to use in your IDE of choice, right? And in doing so, I think that helps to make it more automatable, if you will, that at least your agent, your LLM is like following the rules that we've put clearly into the documentation. I know that's not exactly what you were saying, but I think it's like a little bit related to that.
Hello there. So are there any plans for supporting anything like a staging environment where you can ask the review team to see some changes that you make due to the UX? For example, we're using the contextual save bar, but we are also using modals. So at some point, we had rejection because the modals were using the save buttons on the modal and not the contextual save bar, which in my opinion is not very practical. I mean, when you are in a modal, you have to stay on the modal. So is there any plan to have something like a staging thing for changes that you make to your application? And then once you get the okay from the review team for the BFS, then you move to production.
Modals are Mark's middle name. Mark loves modals.
Are you using the AppBridge modals out of curiosity, or is this with the AppBridge modals, or like Polaris modals you're talking about? Polaris modal, okay. Yeah, I don't think we've discussed a staging environment. If you're in a renewal program, like if you're already in BFS and you're going through a renewal process, probably a lot of you have already seen, but you can now reply to those emails, which I think kind of gets to the heart of what you're talking about, which is like, hey, I don't quite agree with this assessment. What if we did it this way? And you can respond to the email and share that. How you do that is maybe you record a video or something, you share that with the reviewer. So there's an opportunity for dialogue there. But right now that's only for renewals. So if you're a brand new applicant to the program, you don't have that conversational mechanism right now. Potentially there's a future where something like that does get rolled out for all BFS applicants, but I don't think there's anything on that topic that I'm aware of imminently.
How are we on time? 5? Okay.
Currently, I think the biggest the advantage of having BFS is better discoverability or ranking in search, and then reputational advantage of merchants knowing about having BFS. In the future, are there plans to add further incentives for BFS apps? And can you give us any indication of maybe not necessarily exactly what those will be, but in which direction they would be oriented towards, if that makes sense, the question? So what are the future advantages BFS apps would have compared to not having one? If you could share some insight.
What do you have in mind?
There are some jackets floating around out here. Those are pretty cool. Will there be more incentives? I think definitely. I don't know that there's anything we can reveal at this point in time, though. We're certainly well aware that this is like a topic, though, right? It's like at first there was no BFS, and then the first 3 apps that got BFS had a huge bump because there's no one else to compete with, and now we're reaching a point where there's more and more apps that have the status. So, it's well on our mind how we tackle this, but
Would love to hear. I was actually serious about it. Come and talk to me. I want to hear what would be of interest to partners. That's always something we're open to hearing. We have shared discounts.
we have talked. Hopefully I can say we've talked about like exclusive access to like kind of functionality maybe ahead of time is a thing, but hopefully that's okay
Nothing
to
officially
say.
yet,
Even
though.
and yeah, there are things that we're looking at certainly to make it continually to be appealing.
More? Yes, we have one over here in the room. I'll give you.
Hi, Janita from Inspired. So just, I feel like a lot of talk about embedded admin, but I was wondering, like, with the introduction of AI assistants and agents, and you guys even leaning towards an evergreen solution with Polaris, one of the requirements, requires like merchants to come into the admin every 30 days. But with automation, coming to the forefront, our app is a very like, you turn it on and you just like set it and forget it evergreen app. So that requirement kind of dings us. And I feel like we're all moving towards, stepping further away and letting things just run on their own. Do you see that changing?
You want? I can answer it, or you can answer it.
Yeah, you go.
I mean, I definitely think it will change. I mean, there's not a plan at the moment to say like, yes, we're officially working on that, but I mean, it makes sense, right? And in this case, you're talking about like a certain frequency of usage, right? And whether it's the merchant, like a human using it, or the agent using it, I think that's really the spirit of what that's about. But what was the other part of your question? Or was it just that? Okay.
Yeah, it was just that. Just trying to understand, like, are we getting dinged for being, like, very easy to use and helpful for merchants?
Yeah.
Because we're not requiring them to come back to the admin to do something every month.
Yep.
I think that it's like a positive.
Yeah, it's not, like I said, it's not an official plan, but I could see that changing pretty soon, just how rapidly we're seeing AI. Okay. We are being played off the stage. We've got more time over here. Please come visit us. Grab some snacks.
Again, we're going to be in the lounge just outside the doors, like
Yep.
the rest of the day. So come
Yep.
by and talk to us there. Say
Grab
hello.
some snacks too.
Thanks so much.